Good morning, everybody.
Good morning. It's a Friday, a beautiful Friday. Couldn't think of a better way to end the week off and head into the weekend. It is March 15th, the year 2024. Welcome aboard, everybody. You listen to the Crushing Iron podcast, and this is episode 756.
You nailed it. And we're rolling into the season, it looks like, with this weather.
We are. It is on. It is on like Donkey Kong. It is had a little bit of a start with some, I think, Ironman New Zealand. We had an athlete doing that, and you got some of the South American races going on. You got Puerto Rico 70.3 this weekend. You got an athlete over Australia doing Geelong next weekend. And then you got a week on a break. Then you got Oceanside, Texas 70.3. Then you got Ironman Texas. Then you got Gulf Coast. And we're here. It's on. Even had a little bit of a rust buster this last weekend with some of the nationally televised races for the pros, if you can see any of it, or at least the women's race, because it's been mostly in the dark. But yeah, it is here. It's getting warmer. Daylight savings time has happened. It's staying light till 8 o'clock. The sun is out. There's not a cloud in the sky today here in Overland Park, Kansas, and it's time to get racing. So I hope you're having an awesome week. And if you're racing this weekend, no matter what distance and what discipline, have fun and get out there and enjoy yourself. And we'll talk a little bit about that today during the podcast. But if it's your first time tuning in today, welcome. We appreciate you giving us your time. We know you have quite a lot of options in the triathlon podcast universe and just podcasts in general. We appreciate you tuning in today. We cover it all. We do swim, bike, and run specific podcasts, video race recaps, and also a lot of race previews. But for the most part, Mike and I, as coaches, athletes, best friends, we just sit back, relax, have an open, honest discussion about what we're going through in life, not just as human beings, but also as coaches and athletes ourselves. Mike and I work with a wide range of athletes all across the globe, from beginner-level athletes in the very first 5K or sprint triathlon, all the way up through elite-level amateurs trying to get back to world championships, and everyone in between from all over the globe. We'll use the feedback loop we have with them and Training Peaks, emails, text messages, and to drive the discussion today. We also like to utilize our Facebook group. You can search that. It's Crushing Iron Group. Answer one simple question and let's right in. Awesome people, fantastic community, solid resource in a sport that has oftentimes been way overcomplicated and way too confusing. It is a safe, actionable space to get great information from qualified and seasoned veterans and even some good rookies alike to help you avoid some of the pitfalls we've all had along the way. We'll go in there about once a month, every 4 weeks, do a little bit of a Q&A, take the pulse of the community, do our very best to answer as many questions as we possibly can. And that is it. We have no sponsors. We have no ads. We do have an agenda. And that's to keep you happy and healthy in your endurance sports journey.
I like that. Qualified amateurs. You don't hear
qualified amateur. That's right. So that's what we are. We are qualified amateurs.
I got a couple of things to say. First is, I moved back here to Wisconsin.
That sounded serious. I felt like we were having like an airing of grievances, like you were George Costanza standing up at the table saying, I got a lot of problems with you people, and you're about to unleash.
It's so funny. I've been watching that every night. That's my wind down music. And it's just so ridiculous. But yeah, so I was thinking, because I moved back to Wisconsin, and as we were living in Nashville and Chattanooga, I'd see everybody posting year round about how winter, this sucks, it's the worst, and this. So I was really, really prepared to deal with the elements up here. And I got to tell you, I was a little disappointed in what they dished out. It wasn't that bad. I mean, we had, a few bad weeks or whatever and a little bit of snow, but, I've ridden outside 5 times already this year, and it's March.
It seems like it's become more condensed and severe. I don't know. It's not like, not hear me out here.
All right. Everybody's going to blame it on something, but
and that's something. I feel like the last few years, it's been the winters have overall been really mild, but there's been like a 2 or 3 week span where it's been like Antarctic.
Yeah, there's some stuff like that, but I just think that there's so much hype on it that it gets overhyped and it doesn't seem like that big a deal.
I like that. Expectations.
Yeah, it's like, your memories as a kid are so much stronger. If at any kind of time you walked outside and your toes got numb, that's like, that stays with you forever. But so I was really prepared for that. Anyway, so got the, outside on the bike 5 times already. I feel like I'm almost ready to jump in this water and swim in March. And I'm like, okay, if I can shorten or lengthen the swimming season, that's a huge win. But more importantly, back to our last discussion, buddy, when you said that about swimming, it kind of hit me. I think that was the spark I needed for the bike. So I've been getting out, and I found my route here, and I'm actually kind of excited about getting on the bike and turning my strength into a greater strength.
Make your strength rise the level of your weaknesses.
Yeah, I just think it's hard, man. When people are good at something, it's easy to kind of give it lip service.
I can relate, and to be a non-hypocrite, I've also been hitting the swim this week. I've gotten in a 3,700 yard swim, and I did a 4K swim on Wednesday.
That's huge, man.
I did the tried and true mental and physical burner, 40 by 100.
Oh,
yep. 40 by 100 race pace. So for me, that was, it's like goal race pace on 145. So I did about 120. I did 125 was what I was holding. So I had 20 seconds rest. And then I did kind of throw a little bit of a breaker in there, because what I don't like to count where I'm at, because then it just makes it feel like, or look at where I'm at on my watch. I feel like it makes it take like so long. Like forever. Like sometimes I'll get text messages from on the bike and like, hey, how much longer you get? I'm like, I don't know. I'm not looking yet. Because I feel like because I do that all the time. I play those games. Like the longer I can go without looking, the better it's going to be. And so I don't look. I just don't look as long as I possibly can. And so I'll do like fun, a relative term. I'll make like little games of 4,800. All right, every 9th one is fast. Every 8th one is fast. Every 7th one is fast. Every 6th one is fast. And so I did that. But then the cool thing about that is that in order to do the math to make it up, and I didn't even start doing that until I was like on number 6. I was like, man, I'm already counting. I know I'm at number 6. I got to find a way to like break this up and do this like in a not like, and I say fast, like faster. So drop it from like 125 to 120. But then like, after I get to the 8, I'm like, all right. Then I start trying to do the math in my head. All right, so if I do 9, then do 8, then do 7. By the time I get to like 6, I'm having to like stop 100. And I'm like, all right, and then I start over again. So it doesn't. Then I like check my watch with 5 minutes to go before the Masters team came in, and I was at 3,600. I was like, yes, 4 more. I got 4 more in me, as long as the Masters group doesn't kick me out.
That's all. I mean, I think you got to play those little games in training. But do you find yourself liking swimming a little more? Because I just think the more you do it and the better you get, and the more you start liking it better. And I was thinking,
for sure,
so many people struggle with getting that swim going. And, I almost think like, if you want to get it going, just go do manageable sets, but just try to do it 5 or 6 days a week. Just start going, like making it a real comfortable routine for yourself. And then the next thing you know, you're going to be craving it, and that's kind of what I hope will happen with the bike. I can kind of feel it starting to germinate a little bit, as long as I'm not crazy and go out of my, like ride tomorrow, like 6 hours or something stupid, just because I want to catch up. Just keep loving it. Just do whatever you love every day.
We've talked about that a lot. The two most contagious things in sport is momentum and complacency. Once you get going and you love it, like you're going to keep doing it. You got to keep the momentum behind it. You got to keep going. Like it's just you got to roll it, and you want it, and it keeps you energized. But then if there's no momentum, then you become like even less opportunistic to create momentum. Your body and your mind is resistant to training for some reason. Like I still have that. Like I for whatever reason, we'll get in the topic here in a minute, I swear. But like I had that feeling for whatever reason on Wednesday. I woke up, didn't sleep that great for whatever reason, and I knew I had a run and a swim that day, and I just woke up and I was just super resistant to going out and getting my run done. I think part of it was because I didn't feel like I was going to have a very good. My legs are a little bit sore from the bike the previous day. I had a bigger swim on Monday, and I knew the week was going to be big. And I also think like, I'm on spring breaks, but I'm staying here at home. I'm trying to get a lot of training and hang out. My mom's here, just trying to hang out with family. And I think that's also a lot more challenging because you're not in a routine and you don't have a set schedule, that you tend to get a little more lazy because you're like, because you're I think not lazy, your sense of urgency is not there.
Yeah. Oh,
You know,
welcome to my
it's not
life,
like I could
dude.
get right into Training Peaks and look through comments and do this because I'm off this week. And so I think that was part of it. But I was just like, I kept like, why am I resistant to this run? And I honestly couldn't even answer it. I was like, and so I even thought like, how do I push it? No, just get out and if you feel, again, you go through the little triage. Like if you feel great because I had some intervals in there, you roll with it. If you don't feel good, just make it easy. And so went out there and had like probably my best run of the year. Felt awesome. And then went out later that day and swam. And got my got my 4K in. So big day, but it was it's interesting how even when you are like creating momentum, like there are certain things that in your mind you just kind of say, you don't need to do it. And so it's always a mind game to me. And whether you're listening to your, to whatever it is, and if it's a real, if it's a perceived fear that's not really not really real in terms of like why you shouldn't do something, like, you really don't feel well. Or there's just something in you that's like, I just don't do it today. Whatever resistance, I think recognizing overall resistance and unlocking that is a crucial piece to staying consistent.
Yeah.
And we're already like way off topic here. I know we could make this a podcast, but we're not. I do, but I meant to say this earlier, but I do want to give. We don't do sponsors, we don't do ads, but I do want to give a shout out to a local guy who gave me some samples. Kurt's Bars. That's kurtzbars.com. Legit.
What's he got? What? Does he need
legit.
My address?
Couple things. They're energy bars.
Okay.
So I got a sample back. I had a coffee with him 2 weeks ago. Gave me some samples. Blew right through them, which is slightly problematic, but blew right through them. Had one a day. I think I had my two favorite were chocolate pretzel crunch and chocolate peanut butter blitz. They were great, like afternoon snack. He's this very, very, very small company, entrepreneur. But if you're looking for like a nice, energy, boost, or you're looking for a new bar or want to try one out, hit the guy up. Super solid dude. And then if you're really feeling like you want to enjoy life even better, check out his peanut butter pretzel granola. Just don't sit with the bag. That's my only thing. Take a handful, walk away. Just don't sit with it like on the couch, because the next thing you know, it's going to be like a can of Pringles that's going to be gone. So go visit that, support the guy. I don't have a discount code because I didn't ask for one and he didn't offer one, but great. Good. I always find it good. Always awesome to support local small businesses instead of always shoving everybody towards the big guy. So if you're looking for a nice little change of pace or just want to support them, go and hit them up and pick out. Just go to chocolate peanut butter bread. You can't go wrong.
Oh, I like it, man. Yeah. And if you're in the Mauston area and you're looking to recover a little bit, stop by Beyond the Daily Grind. They didn't even ask me for that ad either.
Who is this place now?
It's called Beyond the Daily Grind. It's a nice little breakfast place that I ate at the other day, and they're super sweet. I went up to the counter to order even, and I've had my money out, and they go, we'll just take care of that later. Just go sit down and have a coffee.
We'll take care of that later. That's also code for our machines down right now.
I was like, exactly, "Are you going to take?"
That's code for. No. We can't scan our credit card readers down right now. That's also what that's code for.
Yeah, it was a cold hard $20 bill.
So yeah, we don't do sponsors, we don't do ads, but we do love supporting random businesses. So if you're a listener and you own and operate your own small business, toss us a line. We'll throw you some love. We might not be able to generate millions, but maybe a couple $100 here and there.
Never know. We've built neighborhoods before.
This is true. We have built neighborhoods. Thank you. You're welcome, Southside Chattanooga. We're on the topic for today. Before we get too long in the other conversations and catching up, and plus I got a basketball game to watch. The transition from off season, like it's going to be talked about in the Open, to race season is here, and I've got two athletes doing 70.3s this weekend in Puerto Rico, which no matter like where you live is a huge not gut punch, but it's a challenging start to the year. Texas is too. Oceanside's not really hot, but it's super hilly. Texas 70.3 can be challenging, even though it's not usually that hot. It can be super windy, which are all, to me, those three, right? Terrain, wind, and temperature are the three things you can't prepare for inside that well, unless you make like a really conscious decision to train for those. So it's a huge wake-up call. And then watching the athletes this last week at the PTO T100 race go out there and watching athletes that, were, generally overseas, living in Europe and other places, like even doing heat acclimation, it's not the same. Then you see a guy like Sam Long, professional who lives in, Tucson, Arizona, he blazed through the field. And even for a tall, like pretty big guy who you're not supposed to be able to dissipate heat as well as some of the smaller guys, he looked just generally unfazed. Like it wasn't even phasing him, and he just blew through the field. And so, I was having this conversation with Lionel Sanders' biggest fan, Brian Snell, one of our athletes. Yesterday, he's down in Puerto Rico, and the dew point's like 70. It's going to be super hot. And so we had a little side discussion about the race and tactics. And I just think it's a good overall discussion as we kind of enter into the race season, whether you're racing in March, April, or May. It's still your early season race, right? And there are still going to be challenges with the temperature. Like that's why Chattanooga is always, to me, May, that Gulf Coast, Chattanooga 70.3 range. Eagle Man's another good one, even though it's in early June. They're all kind of early enough where you always seem to get like a big pop in the heat. And even though it might not feel hot come August, right? 75, 80 is going to feel like a cool day come August. It's all relative to the temperature difference and where you've come and where you've been living. So I thought, nice topic today. Go over ways to approach early season races. We could also we're also talking about ways to prepare for the heat. Right, I'm going to be doing that starting, well, really next week because I'll be down in Texas, and I saw some 81-degree days. And preparing for the heat to where you're still gaining fitness and you're not shelling yourself. But the first thing to me is again talking with Snell yesterday, one of our athletes was, to me, early season races is where you kind of throw expectations out the window. It's your first race in a while, right? You're kind of dusting off the cobwebs. But to me, the biggest thing is ask yourself, what do I really want to learn today? Right? To me, never make it solely about the outcome, right? And I think generally never make it about just the outcome. Make it about what can I do along the way to get the most, because triathlon's a huge puzzle, right? It's why we love it, why we hate it at the same time. No matter how well we do, no matter how frustrated we are, no matter how awesome we're doing, no matter what the PR is, no matter how difficult the race is, we always end, no matter what, whether you're on the podium or you've had your worst race ever, your next thought is always, how can I get better? There is no like, all right, that was good enough. Let's just train to train. And I don't care if I never have PR ever again. Never happens, right? You're always driven to get better, to get faster, or even to execute it better, right? A lot of it comes out of execution. And so one of the things I asked him, because he chose this race because he said it was good, good prep for Lake Placid. This athlete's doing Ironman Lake Placid in July. It's usually hot. The course is hilly, the runs, and his goal was like, I really want to do this race to prepare for how things are going to feel in Lake Placid. And if I can really run when I'm pushing a bike, and you're looking at the temperature and you're like, it's going to be, 80 degrees, insane, not insane, but, just for this time of year, really, really crappy humidity and it's just not friendly to racing well, right? I think he said mid to high 80s, 70 dew point. So, we call that insufferable, like just really not well. And so I just said, hey, like, what do you want to, what's the thing you really want to figure out the most in this race? And his comment was how I handled the heat on the run after a hard bike. Conditions in July and Lake Placid are just like this, maybe even hotter, but it's also this humid. And I also want to test out my fueling strategy. And so what I kind of, and that's what a typical athlete would say. I want to see how I can do, but what I kind of threw back at him was, well, if you really truly want to see how a strategy works and how you want to apply it to a different race down the road, that different race down the road is not just a different race, but also a different strategy, right? An Ironman is a totally different racing and pacing strategy than a 70.3. And so I said, well, what I would do, because going out and hammering a 70.3 bike and seeing how you run and seeing how the fueling strategy go is going to be like have 0% comparison to what you would do and how you'd pace a full, right? At a full, you're not going to go full gas from the start, right? You're gonna pace it. You're gonna be, mid, high zone, zone two, low zone two, whatever your zone, zones that you use are. It's not going to be hammering it. It's also going to be more than twice as long. And then you're going to be doing a run that is at less effort and twice as long, right? So you can't execute one race totally different than you would execute the race that you're trying to kind of get intel with. And that's what I hear a lot of athletes do this time of year is they're looking at races or, I kind of want to figure things out. Well, then if you want to figure things out, then allow yourself to figure something out, right? And you and I talk about this a lot when it comes to race day execution. If you don't execute well, then you learn nothing. Besides, you can't pace well, right? Which most people is just reaffirming what we already know is you can't pace well. Like the problem isn't your fitness. Same reason that I have such a hard time as a coach testing with athletes, right? Is if you go out and you're doing a 20-minute test or you're doing a 5K or you're doing a CSS swim test and you go out and you just burn all your biscuits in the first 100 meters or the first 1 mile of 5K or the first 8 minutes of the bike and you have a horrible test, right? You just paced it terribly and you know that. We learned nothing. Learn nothing fitness-wise. Zero. Not wasted day, but yeah, when it comes to the outcome and we wanted to learn, we learned one thing. You're impulsive and you can't pace. That's it. That's all we learned, right? So the racing is very much the same. That's why if you can execute a race and learn, so what I told Snell was, then what I want you to do is take the first 30 miles of the 70 point of this race at our Ironman watts. Right? That's going to be for two reasons. One, it's going to be so hot, you have no idea how your body is going to respond to it because you can do all the heat training and all the heat prep you want to at home. You can ride the trainer with no fan. You can wear 2 swim caps in the pool and swim at the hottest pool in your city. You can go out for your long runs where it's 60 degrees and wear tights, a t-shirt, a jacket, gloves, and a hoodie. You can do all that. Right? You can do all that to try and prepare for each individual sport to get better at acclimating to the heat, right? But what you're not going to be able to do is do it all back to back to back. And you're not going to do it, at a different intensity. So you're not going to get in the water, right? Again, Puerto Rico, Texas, it's going to be warmer, right? And a lot of them, and the bad thing about all these races is that it's warmer, but the water hasn't caught up. So they're also wetsuit legal. So then you're getting in. So you got a wetsuit, which is already raising your core temp. You go for a swim. You're swimming, probably around a little below threshold, hopefully, and you're gonna get a lot. Then you're gonna go bike for, at a higher intensity. So you're gonna start, really generating a ton of heat. You're not used to dissipating. You haven't had probably the perfect practice on your hydration needs, how to cool yourself, your sodium intake. And you're going to go off and you're going to run in even hotter conditions at a hotter dew point at a higher dew point and a higher humidity. You have no idea. So so these early season races, especially the hot ones, there is one great way to ruin the race. And I was listening to actually that Triathlon Show podcast this morning with Paul Finley and Eric Lagerstrom, and I guess their co-host Nick, which is I think where maybe I got the Nick from. And Paul Finley who is one of my favorite female triathletes. She basically said all I really needed to do in the women's race, which was late in the day, was I just knew if I just didn't not finish and I just didn't implode, then I would make my way through the field and do fine. And because it was all about pacing. It was because everyone else was imploding. And if you look at the men's race, that's exactly what happened. And this is generally very common for most dudes because they have no restraint. They'll just go out guns blazing and they'll fade. And all you have to do is not be an idiot and move your way forward. So I said, it's all about the run. But again, find something in these early season races, right? If you're using it as kind of like recon then don't put all these expectations of a time on it, because then what's going to happen is you're going to go into the race. You're going to try and, invest all your expectations and your previous times or previous splits from all these other races, and you're going to end up imploding at mile 45 of the bike at 7.3, and you're going to do a walk run for the half marathon portion. All you're going to learn at the end of the day was, one, That sucked and it was hot. I don't know what to do. I'm terrible at pacing. I have no restraint and I know nothing about what I need to do for fuel and hydration. So what you learned was nothing. All you did was gather mistakes. And so there's these early season races are perfect for removing outcomes, right? Removing expectations for a time, but finding one piece or one part of the race that is totally controllable by execution in your brain, and finding a way to execute that to the best of your ability so you can have that to take forward for the rest of the season.
Yeah, the early season race is tricky, right? Because it depends on where you live and where you're going and racing and stuff like that. I remember when we lived in Nashville, before I really got into this, well, I mean, I don't know if it was right at the beginning, maybe. I used to watch the Nashville Marathon a lot. When was that? In April, I feel like, back then. Yeah, I think it was in April. But one year it was super hot. I mean, not super hot, but it was like mid to upper 70s or something. Not really hot, but hot for that time of year. And I was watching down on about mile 20. And people were just laying on the side of the road, and I was kind of trying to help and see if they needed water and everything. And it seemed like a lot of them were from Canada. And it's just so interesting because I've done that before where, in Nashville, you train for early season races that are, like we used to go to Knoxville a lot, and it was the same climate. And I would, in Nashville, you can get outside a lot earlier. And so I had a lot of that. But there was one year when I went to New Orleans, and you remember it well. I mean, that was a completely different story. I had gone to the Final Four in Dallas the week before. I drove to Dallas, and then I drove back to Nashville, and then the next week I drove to New Orleans and raced, and I was just not trained.
Your mom texted me and asked me where you were.
I
was like, I'm not even there.
I literally, it was the week before the race, and I remember we were in a hotel in Dallas, and the Badgers just got beat by Kentucky the next day, and I'm like, I got to go do some running. Man, we were just so ripped out the night before, and I went out in the courtyard and ran like 2.5 miles or something, and I was like shelled. And I had to race the next weekend. But anyway, I was way undertrained for that plus, So, yeah, I went down there to learn, but at the end of that race, I was like, how can I learn how to retire from the sport without anybody knowing about it? Because it was just brutal. But I think your point is so excellent because when I think about going into a hotter climate than you're used to, even if you're you're used to it a little bit, but it gets real hot or that particular race weekend. I always talk about warming up slowly, and you kind of hit on it with Snell and, racing at Ironman effort or pace or watts for the first half of that ride or whatever. And I just think it's one of those things where we don't think about warming up when it's hot, because your system, it's not even warming up. It's about really kind of engaging your cooling system in a manageable way. And I think what happens a lot of times, we're not used to it. We go out, it's hotter than we think it is. We're trying to just be the same person. And the next thing you know, your cooling system goes into overdrive, which is overheat. And to me, it's like you think about warming up when it's hot, which is a weird concept, but it's just about getting your sweating in a good controlled way, right? Because I think that to me, it's all about getting your systems ready to roll. And in that case, it's kind of the opposite of what you would think about it, but it still makes sense to me that you want to be able to cool down in a, sort of pace or patient way. Does that even make any sense to you? Because that's what I just think about it in that terms, is like when it's hot and you just go out too hot, you're just going to be overheated. But I think you can beat it if you're chilling out a little bit more, giving your radiator a little chance to kind of take care of business without having to pump it all out at once.
No, I mean, to me, it not only doesn't make perfect sense, but it's basically scientifically proven. Like I've quoted this and referred to this study numerous times on this podcast since we started it. But I read a study on heat stroke, and over 5K, 10K, half marathon, and marathon, and the highest incident of heat stroke among runners is the 5K and the 10K. And you think, that doesn't make any sense. It's so short. But it's because they go from totally standing still, right, to the highest speed they can generate, right? And they do it so rapidly and so quickly that before they really even know what's hit them, it's too late, right? Versus a marathon, you're not going, right? You're not going at nearly the speed you would go. And you're not doing it, obviously, you're not even doing it out of the gate. Even like if you watch like the Boston Marathon, Chicago Marathon, Berlin, whatever it is, a lot of these, they try to even pace it or negative split. And to them, they go out easy the first few miles. And they look like they're running, 9 minutes, but they're running like, 5:10s. So you need to give your body time to figure out like how it's working today and how it's dissipating heat. Like even if you watch the Tour de France on the really, really hot days, they've all got these cooling vests on, but they're not sitting in like a cryo chamber with a cooling vest on, or sitting in a chair. They're on their bike spinning their legs, right? Yeah, they got to get warm because they've been riding 100 miles a day, but I think generally it's like the best way to find a baseline is to match, right, external and internal factors together to see what you really have, not just allow an external factor to influence what you think the day is going to be like. I mean, like to me, it's like very similar to, like how you feel is, a lot of times based on your surroundings. Like I can walk into it's been super warm here this week. And then last week, it was a little bit colder. We were up in Lincoln, Nebraska for a hockey tournament, and it was cold outside. So when I walked into the arena, I was like, this feels pretty fine. Like this is not cold at all. Well, I walked into Hayden's hockey practice, or not practice, but hockey camp yesterday. It's 7 degrees. That's when I walked in. I was like, I'm freezing. It's like I'm freezing. Temperature, pretty much the exact same. Right. But it was the fact that I was in hot weather, went into cold weather. The extreme is what made me feel like it was that much cooler because there's so much of a difference in drop in temperature. And so I think that it's just really smart, especially like you said, with these early season races. You have first of all, even if the temperature is perfect, you still don't have any idea who you are until, if you're doing a 7.3 till 30 miles of the bike. You have no clue if it's your best day or your worst day. You have no idea. Zero idea. And so it is like, again, heat aside, dew point aside, humidity aside, wind aside, you have no idea who you are that early in a day, for better or for worse. And the only way to make it worse is to decide you don't have it or you do have it, after the first buoy of the swim, right? Or the first aid station on the bike. Like the best thing you can do. And again, a lot of times the best way to learn something about yourself and about your fitness is to actually be able to control and govern your speed and your effort with the fitness that you have over the course of the day with the demands of the day, right? Because you won't have any idea what fitness you really have if the conditions determine and force you to slow down and walk or drop your power by 20, right? You don't want to be defensive and reactive, right? The conditions you want to decide, I'm going to start this off a little bit slower because you can, again, I don't know how many times we sit in the pocket, but you can't say it enough. Never had an athlete finish a half marathon or a marathon and be like, yeah, dude, I totally wish I would have pushed it the last 20% of the bike. Totally. I mean, I'd have saved so much time. No, they always say, I probably shouldn't have pushed as much in the bike. I probably shouldn't have ran the first 5K out of the gate that fast. Because in race, and again, go back and watch if you didn't, and you're preparing for a hot race, go back and watch the PTO T100 race on YouTube and strictly watch how no one really came back. No one really from the front, no one from the back really did anything crazy. They just didn't fuck up. All they did was run there. And I think I remember hearing Sam Long, who was not a very good swimmer, say before the race, he actually thought that maybe not coming out in the first swim pack would be to his advantage because he'd be so far back that the only thing he could do is to run his own race. Not get caught up in tactics, not get caught up in trying to pass somebody, not get caught up in trying to hold a group, not come out of T2 with 2 or 3 guys or a guy right there trying to chase him, but just to run his own race. And he absolutely destroyed, for all the shit the guy gets, he absolutely wrecked everyone. And it wasn't, yes, he had an incredible run split and an awesome bike split, but so if you think about it, it was just as much about him passing people as people coming back to him. And to me, like if you think about it again, and then I think one of the best measurement, the best measurement of how you truly did for the day is not about your PR for the day. It's not about your placement in your age group or even within your gender. It's how you stood and what your percentage was against the field. Because you all had to deal with the same circumstances, right? Are you top 50? Are you top 100? Are you top 200? Are you top 300? Whatever it is, what top, or even just to gender, right? Is it top age up against the field? Because that tells you really how you manage the day versus the other athletes that manage the day. Because long course racing, 70.3 and up, especially if you're trying to use that. And again, that's why I love that metric, because it's so much about intelligence, which is a choice. It's not fitness related. It's a choice and a conscious decision you make to do or not do something, right? To grab the first water bottle. I think I remember referencing it. What was it? 2 years ago when, you and I were up there for doing Ohio, and I had a pretty good day, and outside of my shit swim that I totally deserved, that I think I talked about, that I went by, it was super, cause you did the half marathon, the dew point was like 74, 76. I did the first mile and I missed like a water bottle at the very last table of the very first aid station. And I went like 2 steps past, and my first thought's always, I just get the next one. Mm-hmm. But I could already feel myself getting hot. And I stopped and turned around, walked, got it, drenched myself, because I knew that this was going to have to be the plan for the whole day. It was either going to be walk the aid stations and stay cool, or it was going to be walk the last 5K and clap and cheer on the rest of the competitors. And when it comes to the experience I would like to have the most, it's not walking the last 5K and cheering on the competitors. It's getting my ass off the course as quickly as possible because it's all painful. And again, like that's, if you think about, even just like the visual of watching Sam Long racing so well and everyone else racing so terrible, take that visual and apply it to yourself. Athlete A and athlete B, right? Athlete A is the one up the road who swam hard, is biking way too hard, and they're 3 minutes ahead of you coming off the bike. But they're already super hot. The core temp is already super high. And you come off the bike feeling fresh. 3 minutes is nothing over even a half marathon distance. It's absolute chump change. 20 seconds per mile, I think, is what that is for the mile split. Yeah. That's nothing. Nothing. That's the difference between an 8:20 or an 8 minute mile, or a 7:40 and a 7:20. Right? But think if you're running 8 minute miles, and you can do that, or the next person runs, 7:50s for the first 2 miles, and you hold your 8s and they drop to 9s. You've passed them at mile 7. Mm-hmm. And then you beat them by 4 minutes. If they don't even slow down anymore. That's a 7-8 minute swing. That's insane. Right? So I think that's just a great visual of thinking like about, your alternative self. And I think we should all, like, when you look at races that you're going to do this year, and you run through scenarios, right? Which I think it's a great thing for every athlete to do, whether it's super cold race, super hot race. I mean, same thing with races that are really cold, like what can I do to beat the version of me that makes bad decisions, right? So let's say I come off the bike 5 minutes ahead. What's that going to mean for my run, right? And kind of, work your way forward and kind of visualize, yeah, I can totally meet them. I mean, that's why it's always about the run. Always. It is always about the run. At the age group level, at the highest level, it is about the run. Who can come off the bike and run the best and work the way through the field, especially in hot races, because once your core temp is too high, you can't get it under control by dropping 5 seconds per mile. You're dropping like a minute, or you're walking, right? And so that's just, again, if you don't want to think about how you want to do against the field, or how you want to do against your age group, or how you want to do against athletes than the same gender, think about the other version of you as an athlete. If you've always been irresponsible, if you always raced, erratically and with no restraint, and you wonder why you keep, walking the run, and you blame it on the bike, and you blame it on nutrition, and you blame it on, whatever, blame it on you and your terrible pacing. At some point, you have to realize that it's not my fitness's fault. It's how I'm deciding when and how to use it. It's on me. It's on my decision making. That is my fault. If you overbike, you'll never see your run fitness. It's not, you just won't. You won't have any idea. Same thing as like a coach. Like, that's why it's so hard to like sometimes go back and review a race, right? And use, I feel like my run fitness isn't there. Like, I really thought I was gonna do better. And you're like, okay, well, I'm looking back at your bike ride. You were 20 watts over what I suggested, and your variability index was like a 1.30, right? Like, you wrecked yourself on the bike. So we have no idea what your run fitness was. We just know that you overbiked. And athletes are always about learning and always about, comparison. And you can only truly compare well-executed races versus well-executed races. If you're not committed, if you're not dedicated, if you're not concentrating enough on executing the race, and you're just looking through, which we've talked about before, and you're just looking through Iron Track, and you're just looking through past results, and you've got your note card out about, what kind of day is this, and this is what I'm going to do, then you might get it, but the chances are that's like a 10% chance. The other chance is that you aren't going to have any idea what you are. Are you going to overshoot or undershoot? And so the one thing you have to commit to, especially early in the year, where you can train all you want to, you can do simulations, you can do whatever it is. Race day is different dynamics, different environment, different, requirement of decision making, right? You're a lot less, most athletes are a lot less likely to make shitty decisions and have poor judgment in practice, because there's not cheering fans and people staring at you and people watching on a tracker, right? You're kind of lay it low a little bit. Same way you can blow it out with fans are there. Like, it's a lot easier to blow out a 5K time trial when you're doing it at a 5K race versus going out on a Tuesday morning by yourself. Right. Mm-hmm. And so like that energy, and you always talk about it, using, the energy from the crowd to kind of get you that extra boost. But, and that, while that's true, it can also be a negative, because you can also allow that to impact your judgment on what it is you really feel, because you get that endorphin rush, you get that buzz of the crowd and the spectator. You're jamming out with, the pre-race tunes on the swim, all the classics, and then you come on the bike and you're I can't believe I'm outside riding my bike right now. It's your first time outside in like 6 months, and bad decisions reign. And you just have to be so patient and so aware and just methodical to the next level of your own race. Because, and I truly think that's why, like, when you look at the Kona World Championships in the last 5 or 6 years, about the athletes that have won it, besides like Lucy Charles Barkley, did it off the, from leading start to finish, which is like the only time it's ever happened for the females, is that you always see people come from 7, 8, 9, 10, sometimes further back to be on the top 3, because they're running their own race, and they work their way up the field while others are working their way back. And it's so much easier to work your way through a field when it's also doing work to come to you, right? And so much energizing too. If you think about it on the run portion, it's a hot day, and you see people passing you, or you can feel and see people actually passing you, right? Or getting further up the field or further up the road. Like, what that does to you psychologically, it makes you feel like you're moving backwards, versus being the one passing and seeing people come to you. That's just validation, not just of fitness and a good day, but of that you've executed your race better than every single person you're passing. And to me, I think it's the hardest thing to do in triathlon, is to run your own race and to execute it to perfection. Because a lot of times your perfectly executed race is pretty much often your best overall time, but it's oftentimes not when you had your best overall fitness. Because a lot of times when you have your best overall fitness, it makes it even harder to make those decisions to slow down or to be smarter, to not go out too fast, because you go back in your Rolodex of training and execution and big workouts, and you've got this proof of concept of what you thought for the day, and you expect to have that, and then you might not, and then you implode. And again, it's there for late season, but especially early season when you just really have no clue about anything.
Yeah, well, what you're talking about, and I listened to this. I watched this little interview the other day with Kevin Garnett and Gilbert Arenas from the NBA, and they had such an interesting discussion. I'm always looking for cross analogies and things like this, but they were talking about some of the greatest players in the league and all this, and the great athletes and everything like that. But they said what always separates the greats from the super skilled highlight films that never win is their IQ, their basketball IQ. And that's what I kept hearing when you were talking there, because we've talked about a million times on here probably. I don't always listen to us. But an Ironman bike or a half Ironman bike, half Ironman bike, maybe saving 5 to 10 minutes slower can save you 20 minutes on the run, and whatever that is, that ratio. And maybe an Ironman bike, if I could just accept riding maybe 15 minutes easier and being more in control of that, I might make up 30 minutes on the run sometime or whatever. And those are the things that I think come into play across the board. It's like, it's a long day, and for you to say, race your race is just, it sounds like a saying, but it really is like the deepest kind of principle that I think we need to listen to. Because if you're going out of your, like you're saying, if you're getting in the crowd and going out of your race strategy, and then, maybe just trying to save 5, 10, 15 minutes on the bike. But that's why I talk about crowd energy, but usually for me, it's an adrenaline that I channel. I don't overreact to it. I just, it gives me boosts when I need it, and it kind of puts me back in a frame of mind. So like in reality, if you can't dig to the well and just go for it at, mile 10 on a 70.3 run, or mile, like with 6 miles left on an Ironman run. And I don't mean like go your fastest, but like have it in the tank to just let it all rip. You probably haven't raced well, like if you start getting that feeling at mile 8 of an Ironman, like I do often, that's you're like, uh-oh moment, right? It's like something went wrong. So like, I think that's the best thing to think about is sort of, where did I screw this up? Did I swim too hard, which just like, snowballed into the bike? And then, because I've had those moments on the bike too, where I'm going, all right, I feel great. And then at mile 80, I'll hit a hill and I'll be like, I'm in trouble. Mm-hmm. And why does that happen? It's all relative too, because if you know what kind of shape you're in and what kind of fitness you have and how you feel that day, you should be able to prolong that moment longer. And I've done it in the past, but sometimes it hits me, and I know right then that that's a terrible sign. So you've got two choices. You can, just try to power through it, or is there enough time to maybe adjust? Because I believe also there's possibility in race recovery, right? Because I got off that bike last year, for example, and I was just thinking, okay, I got to go get it on the run, or, let's just see if I can pull a miracle out of my hat. Or do I kind of take it easy, kind of give myself a little in-race recovery, and then just finish, get back on the horse and finish strong rather than, hanging on by a thread for the last half of the marathon. I just think that you don't have to throw in the towel, but I think you should probably readjust. Maybe you're going a little slower. Maybe you're going to fuel a little stronger at the end of the bike and then take it a little easier in the beginning of the run, or whatever the case may be. I think those opportunities are there. But again, I just think that it's thinking about that stuff. And like you're saying, this early season race is a good opportunity to kind of play around with those techniques and then figure out your high IQ decisions. Not just in the moment trying to plow through everything that doesn't feel right, you know. There's opportunities out there, but I think it is, you know, you've always been talking about it, but it's there's so many talented triathletes out there. Mm-hmm. And what the best ones make the best decisions.
Absolutely. I mean, you said it perfectly. And I think we all have our version of the best triathlete in us. And it's rarely ever comes down to fitness. It is always about execution. And that's, I will never be the fastest triathlete. Never, period. Not that athletically gifted, not that consistent enough. But I can tell you one thing. One thing I can do is I can fucking pace, especially on the run. I know how to do it, and I'm fine with it, and I'm patient with it. And one of the best things that I've always told myself when racing is are you on gas or are you on fumes? And what I mean by that is you want to still be using gas, or we talk about long course racing, 70, even Olympics, Olympic full. It's all about energy expenditure. From the time you set foot in the water, how am I allocating and when am I using up my energy for the day? Because you can't get more. Right. It's just you can try to slow the bleed, but you can't get more. And one of the things I always ask myself, and I think I talked about it when we talked about pacing the other day, is, you know, it's phrases like not yet, just wait. And to me, I'm always thinking, do you want to be running on gas the last 5K or running on fumes? Because if you're running on gas, right, you still got some energy in your tank, then you're going to be running quickly, or the quickest you can go. If you're running on fumes, you're bleeding time and you're trying to slow down as little as possible, but you can't control it because you got nothing left. It's just one foot in front of the other. So think about how you want to end a race and being in control. The last 10K of a full marathon, the last 5K of a half, really being able to run that full stride. You might pass 100 people. And that's not a stretch. The amount of people you see walking and shuffling the last 5K of a marathon or a half and a 7.3 and a full is in the hundreds. And listen, just quickly, if you're running a 8-minute mile and they're running 10s, you made up 6 minutes in the last 5K. That's insane. 6 minutes. That's you running on gas versus them running on fumes. And that can be either a competitor, a person in your age group, or that version of you that paced poorly. So you do, when you're coming out of the swim and you get on the bike and you look up the road, you want to ask yourself, am I athlete A up the road, right? And am I killing time, and am I making waves, and am I getting really hot too? And am I pacing but I'm up the road? And is athlete, you know, my other smarter, more intelligent, more patient version of me about 3 or 4 minutes back, just cruising. And they're looking at me thinking, God, that guy's an idiot. I'll see him in about, it's looking like, I don't know, probably about the 5K, 10K mark. I'll give him a little slap on the back and say, maybe next time, maybe we'll learn something. Or am I triathlete B, who is being patient and being relaxed and being focused? Do I look up the road and see that imaginary triathlete A who's being that irresponsible athlete and think, that is not me? So I think it's a great visual to be the one that's chasing that irresponsible, poor decision-making, impulsive, you know, no strategy version of yourself. If you don't make it a competitor, make that. Because again, like that feeling when you pass somebody, again, you know, passing on the bike is temporary. Passing on the run, pretty much final.
Yeah.
Pretty much final. It's over. Over. And there's a reason it's over. Because you don't have, if you had more fight to give, you wouldn't be getting past. You'd be doing the passing. And again, like when you've just been not racing and not having to put it all together early in the season, the best place for you to be is ultra conservative. Heat or not, it's to be ultra conservative. And so if you got these early season, we can talk about ways to acclimate to the heat and stuff. Well, not next week because I'll be away at some camp, but the following week, we'll talk about ways to heat prep, things that I'm doing and things that are proven with research and things you can do intelligently. But again, early season races, like if you really want to find out where your fitness is and not just find, it's either about finding where your fitness is and finding a way to execute, or it's about finding a way to implode. Which one sounds more fun and encouraging and motivating to start the year off? Traveling and getting on a plane to go implode and race, erratically, and have really nothing to show for it besides your finisher medal, which is fine. But most of us train and focus and invest money and time and energy into getting better and seeing results. And the result doesn't have to be your PR. The best result possible is to execute and learn, because then you gain, right? Because to me, it's always like I have this conversation with athletes all the time. They're like, yeah. They say things like, oh, lesson learned. I'm like, no, it's not. You said lesson learned 19 times in the last 3 months. So you're not learning anything. You're just showing me that this is a habit, that you're committed to making this mistake. That's it. You're not learning a lesson, right? So in the beginning of the year, don't be that. Don't learn a lesson, right? Have a proof of concept. Execute. Be smart, right? And I can tell you, especially early in the year, regardless of time, you are going to have such a better experience being the one doing the passing versus imploding. Never heard a person say, man, it was so much more fun to walk those last 5 miles. I mean, it was awesome. I got to shake hands. I got to kiss babies. I got to tell everyone about all my injuries in the off season. I got to tell everyone about all my excuses. It was awesome. It was a really cool experience. I got to be on course for another hour and a half. I got free Gatorade, free pretzels. It was awesome. I got to take another shit in the porta potty. It was awesome. Couldn't have pictured a better way to end my race. Never.
No.
It's always the running.
Yeah.
Moving as quickly as possible, getting it over with, and then sharing those stories in the finisher tent after you kick some ass all day. And you feel really, really good about the day you put together, right? Not the fitness you sacrifice with poor decision making.
Yeah. Well, I just had a brief aha moment there, in a sense, going back to our old podcast. But, that running on gas or running on fumes, and I've raced on fumes and done well, but you know what? Most of the time, like, you only have so much mental capacity for that. And I think at least with me, there's been times when I'm like, is this really what I want to do? Is this for, because I get that a lot from athletes sometimes after a race. Like, man, I just don't know. This is just wearing me out. And I think that's exactly right. What it is right there is when you go through that second loop and you're walking and you're just barely hanging on by a thread. That's not what we want, right? And that can be a mental just grinder that overwhelms you at times. So I just think that analogy and thinking about the race is more of an inertia thing. That's a true tortoise hare kind of analogy, is just let it build and don't run on fumes. Don't run your whole training on fumes, and don't run your races on fumes, because it's only going to go so far before you crack.
Sounds a lot like life.
Yeah.
Asleep when I'm dead, man. Well, have fun kicking over at 55, because, you can only run on fumes for so long.
Yeah.
That's it.
All right.
All we got. Run on gas this weekend, people. Run on gas. And if you're racing, get out there, execute. That's really all we want to see. Execution and effort. And it does. It takes, honestly, I think it takes more effort to execute than it does to put out energy. Because it's almost harder to put the brakes on than it is to go, full send, which is, what athletes like to do. But again, think about that. Hopefully this has been beneficial. Hopefully you can use it in your races this weekend, the coming weeks, and the coming season. As always, we love you. We appreciate you. Go to our website, c26triathlon.com, and there's a one-stop shop for all things coaching, camps, and community. If you need anything from Mike, he is available at mike@c26triathlon.com. If you need anything from me specifically, I am at Robbie at C26triathlon.com. I will be away all next week at swim camp down in the Woodlands, Texas, with what seems like a fourth of our listener base, with 53 athletes coming in for all the swimming and some running and some good times and a lot of better stroke mechanics and better swim times when they leave.
Yeah. You'll have some of the new coaching staff with you.
Yeah. CJ and Glenn will be down there. We'll have Nicole, we'll have Summer. Yeah. It's going to be awesome. Splitting up into 2 groups for each session to make sure everybody gets the most attention. Pretty much a coach per lane for each session. So yeah, pumped to have that, pumped to see everybody, and pumped to get my heat acclimation started on the runs. I see some 81-degree days with some high heat and humidity and dew points. So I will be going by heart rate only, and just keeping things in check and getting a head start on my heat prep for Texas.
All right. I like it. All right, buddy.
All right, dude. See you later.
See ya.